Do you ever see a successful woman on your feed or in a magazine and think, wow, it must be nice to have it so easy? Well, think again. Behind that glossy cover or smiling face is a ton of hard work, countless failures, and endless learning experiences. I'm Rebecca Minkoff, and I'm here to tell you that success isn't a walk in the park. It takes grit, resilience, and a willingness to take risks. That's why I created Superwoman, a podcast that peels back the varnish and gets into the nitty-gritty of what it takes to make it as a woman in today's world. From luminaries and game changers to women you've never heard of but should, this podcast is here to inspire you to take your next leap, no matter how daunting it may seem. We'll explore the sacrifices these women have made, the highs and lows they've experienced, and the lessons they've learned along the way. So if you're ready to be inspired and learn from some of the most successful women out there, join me on Superwomen. Together, we'll uncover the stories behind the successes and prove that with hard work, determination, and a little bit of luck, anything is possible. Sponsored by Magnum Ice Cream. Magnum Ice Cream believes in more chocolate, more sauces, and more of what makes you, you. Discover a world of indulgence. Enjoy Magnum's rich chocolate flavors in a small, snackable size, sweet, creamy, and decadent. The layered mini ice cream treats are the perfect mini indulgence for whenever your chocolate cravings strike. Calling all cookie lovers, indulge in the new Magnum white chocolate and cookies, crafted with velvety vanilla ice cream swirled with a decadent chocolate ganache, dipped in luscious white chocolate and coated with rich dark chocolate cookie pieces. With only 150 calories per bar, these are the perfect mini treat to share with loved ones. Discover a fun-size golden ratio and pamper your taste buds with Magnum Mini Double Caramel. Classic vanilla bean ice cream is wrapped in a lusciously sweet caramel sauce and dipped in a gooey, chocolatey layer before being covered again in a 44% cacao milk chocolate shell. When it comes to self-expression, indulgence, and chocolate, more is more with Magnum Ice Cream. Hey everyone, you're listening to Superwomen. Today's guest is the legendary Jenna fucking Lyons. I have known Jenna Lyons in my orbit for the better part of 15 years, but I've never really gotten to hang out with her or be able to say she's a friend. Cut to both of us being cast members on Real Housewives, and I had the opportunity to get to know her, to become her friend, dare I say. This episode is all about Jenna, her journey, her businesses, how she's gotten to where she's gotten to and had a legacy of a career. Not many designers can say that. She has built a legacy, and she's more than a designer. She's an entrepreneur, a creative visionary, and a mother, an incredible fiance, and so much more. Take a listen. So I tried to channel Jenna today. If you're watching the podcast, I was like, I'm going to wear a t-shirt and a lariat.
And hello.
And then she shows up. She shows up and some baggy pants, and then
I had on denim, which
this was not planned.
I had a denim shirt on and it was too hot, so I took it off, which would have been hysterical because we would have been opposite.
Oh my God. I was either like, she's going to be in jeans and a shirt, or she'll be in a ball gown, and I'm going to.
I almost wore Birkenstocks too.
Oh my God.
But the ones I have.
We've been together for too many days in a row. It's so weird to go from talking and seeing everybody to like nothing.
Quiet.
And then I'm like, wait, now what?
I know. I mean, it's funny. The first season after I did it, I went away. I literally went away as soon as we wrapped. And so like, I really didn't talk to anyone. And I'm a terrible communicator. So I have like a very small network. So I really didn't like do a lot of reaching out and hanging out over the summer. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens this time.
I am waiting to see what happens.
Yeah.
At least I know we have a date. We have 2 dates.
What are the 2 dates? I don't even know.
We're going to go get lymphatic drainage.
Oh, yeah.
And then we're going to have a double date.
We specifically, I didn't know if there was, I thought you meant everybody. Yes.
Oh, no. I don't think that's happening for a while.
Yeah. Okay. Hello.
Okay. So before we started recording and we were talking about what to talk about, you said that there are lots of misconceptions.
Yes.
I don't know what that's like ever to have those.
Really?
Yeah.
Shocking, right? When somebody thinks you're one way or talks you up because of X, Y, and Z.
Oh my God.
I know.
So what are, give me 3 and then let's discuss them.
I mean, I think the most common one I experience is that you're either creative or your business and that you can't do both.
Yep.
And so that's one. I would say that a title often comes with a certain assumption about what kind of person you are. So if you were the president, you're scary, you're a bitch, all these things kind of layered on. I'm sure my slicked back hair and glasses added to that, but that was another one. And then I think, the other very clear one that I get all the time is like, oh, I'm surprised you're warm. I've heard X, Y, and Z. And, I think when you have a relatively large career and have a public persona, there's a lot of people who either they're jealous and they just want to take you down, or I maybe didn't work so well with you because you weren't really that great. So you don't like me either. And also that there's this people talk about things they don't know anything about, and that happens all the time.
Yep.
And so those are probably three of the most really common misconceptions I experience.
I also think that to add to that, if you're not immediately warm, friendly, open, and engaging, sometimes people, and because you might have a guard, then people just make assumptions that, and they don't know that you're a person and you're going through stuff, and you might be totally just thinking of something else. And like, oh, she was such a bitch when I went to say hi.
That can happen for sure. And I try to be nice to people, but also sometimes I'm, as you said, I could be either exhausted, I could be totally preoccupied with something going on personally. I could also just be in the place where there's this level of output that is required, where oftentimes, I remember when we would do events in the store at J.Crew, and there'd be, people lined up outside the door. And the thing is, they're nervous.
Right.
And so it's up to you or me to say, hi, thank you so much for coming. How did you find out about this? Oh my God, who did you come with? Do you want to take a picture? Of course. And so it was always on me to make the first move. And it gets after like an hour and a half, I was like, I have to take a break.
Oh,
it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And so there are times when someone might approach you and you might already just be exhausted with output. I might have just come from doing something that was running. It required a lot of output, and you just can't give anymore. And so if that person is nervous, they really are looking for you to bring them in, and it can be hard sometimes.
Yeah. So I want to touch on your time at J.Crew. I'm curious. I feel like you, at your most senior position there, were sort of at the end of this male-dominated fashion industry, but the women modeled themselves after that. I say this because I had a woman who was a generation older than you that had this heavy hand, and it was just like they had to mirror this man-like behavior to just succeed as one woman.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious what your experience was in coming up, and did you feel that glass ceiling?
I mean, I think that I was really lucky. I worked for Mickey Drexler, who was literally a women's champion. He loved working with women. He openly preferred it to men. And he said women work incredibly hard. They are great at multitasking. Particularly a lot of the women had children. And when you have children, you find this way of maintaining multiple focuses. You have to. And so you can hold in your head your son's camp or your kids after school at the same time you're in a meeting thinking about budgets. And you just kind of have to. And he would often talk about working with women was really incredibly rewarding, and he enjoyed it so much. And so I never felt that my gender was going to impair my job working for him. And, I also watched him. He was tough, he was also incredibly fun. And he made the experience of working and coming to work every day engaging and exciting. And he loved the product so much.
Yeah.
He was very product focused, which I think is not often the case. A lot of people focus on the numbers and the marketing and budget and cost cutting. And he focused on the product, and everything else sort of cascaded from there. And so I had a really great experience. I feel really lucky.
That's so rare.
I know.
It's amazing.
It is. And I can't, because he is not easy, he's not for everyone. There's a lot of people that have often tried to sort of get information. Well, I've heard he can be hard. I'm like, there is not a person who is successful who hasn't made someone cry. I've made people cry. I didn't mean to.
Yeah.
But often they were the people who didn't mesh well with him, who he didn't necessarily connect with. And so he then found it frustrating, and they would not make it. And it was the same thing for me. It's like people who often don't like me are the people who I didn't connect with, or we didn't work well together. And so it didn't work well. And that is hard because then those people leave and they're the story. They're often the most vocal and they're the storytellers. But the fact of the matter is all the people who really, it's the same old adage you grew up with. It's like for every negative thing you can hear 5 positive things, but you'll remember the negative. And that is very normal in human nature. And so, yeah, it's hard when that happens because I think everyone experiences that.
Well, I think we're also in I don't know what the name is, but like in a society that's like everyone gets an award and no one's used to having it be hard or someone be hard. And I think that's part of like working is it's hard sometimes. Not everyone's perfect and there are assholes, but there's a difference between I'm being hard on you because I'm mean-spirited and I'm being hard on you because I want you to fix it and get better.
Oh, for sure. And I think, there's also culturally a different, attitude towards speaking out. I think there is, there's encouragement to speak out and to speak up. The challenge is then if, there's not a lot of opportunity to be like, hey, wait. And listen, I get it. I'm only saying that in reference to, what I see sometimes people are like, oh, I've heard you're really harsh or really like a hard ass kind of thing. And I'm like, who did you hear that from? Because I'm actually really not a hard ass at all. But, and I don't know who said that. I have no idea, but I'm not surprised. I think, and there were times when I did have to be like a little bit more, it's a pressure cooker situation. You're making decisions that have millions and millions of dollars of impact. It is intense. And
it's intense.
You have to make decisions quickly. People want you to be, they want you to be clear. They want you to be quick and they want you to have confidence in your decisions. And so you kind of learn that is the equation and you have to shift the way you approach things. I had to make the person I was when I started versus the person I was when I left. It's really different.
Tell me who you were when you started and who you were when you left and who are you now?
I think when I started, it was like my life was my job. I didn't believe that I needed to or should have a life. So I didn't have any balance or any understanding. Like everyone, it was sort of a badge of honor to, I worked till 10 o'clock at night. I ate dinner every night at work this week. I am working this weekend, which I did a lot. And that was A, expected, B, sort of par for the course. And also, like I said, a badge of honor. And so I didn't have any balance and I devoted myself completely to my life and my career. And I was shy. I had no opinion of my own. I followed what everybody else said. I was too scared to speak up. I didn't believe that I knew what was right or wrong. I remember really distinctly being in a fitting and whispering to my boss, I think, I really think the waistband is too curvy. And he's like, why are you whispering to me? Tell it to everyone. And I was like, well, I don't want to say anything because if you didn't agree with me, I didn't want you to have to disagree with me in front of the group. I was that person and I couldn't speak out. And it took a long time for me to be able to do that. And it also took a long time for me not to second guess my decision making. And, so that was one really formative moment. And there was another moment where I had a girl who worked for me. So I was technically her boss. And I remember she was presenting something and I was like, I don't know if I love that. I'm not sure. I think that fabric is right. And she's like, okay. She's like, I love it, but if you don't like it, okay. And the level of confidence within which she spoke made me second guess myself. And I was like, God, I need to find that. And I didn't have it. I was, 5 years into my career and I did not have that conviction. I did not believe in myself. I did not think I had any answers that were going to work. And it wasn't until I sort of found slowly, really slowly, a level of trust and a level of confidence. It took me so long. And, I think it's, my career did not rocket. I was there for 27 years. And the first, 10 or 12 years, I was just figuring it out. I was, our culturally back then, now I think we talk so much about I look at my son and his level of confidence and his belief in himself is so vast.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud of him. And I think he's also proud of himself. But I didn't grow up with that. So it took me a long time to find it.
How did you find it?
It was just slow trial and error. It was making decisions on my own and then watching them be approved and watching them have positive feedback, or watching something that I really loved, that I believed in, sell really well. And then somebody coming back to me and saying, oh, we really love these 3 things that you did. Can you make more? Like, this is really great. And it wasn't until customers voted, the money started to vote, then I got positive feedback. People started to trust me because I was making decisions or designing things that people were like, oh, this is working. And so it was iterative, slow, step by step. And it took years. I mean, I would say easily 12 to 13 years before I even began to have confidence in my decisions.
But there's something nice about that you not earned it, but you applied and did the work and the results spoke for themselves, versus someone coming in and having this fake, I know everything,
I saw those people too. And I was always in awe of them. I was like, how do you have so much confidence in yourself? And I didn't. I mean, at the same time, I feel like moving through that and knowing that the confidence came from building a product line that really did have success. I didn't have to speak for myself. You know what I mean? I didn't have to fight for my place. I was rewarded for the fact that I was actually creating things that were making the business stronger. And so that was great because it didn't feel manufactured. It didn't feel...
Well, it's also sustainable.
Right.
It's not a one-hit wonder, or like, I'm going to just trick everyone with my shenanigans and then they'll discover it later.
But the hard part about all of that is like, you can learn to design clothes. You can learn about making clothes. You can learn all those things, but you never learn is how to manage people.
Right.
And so I figured out the clothing part, and then I had to manage people, and then I sucked at that too. It was so hard.
Honestly, I think that's the hardest part.
It's
an incredible skill set if someone has it, but just because you have talent in design and business and merchandising doesn't mean that you're good at managing people. When I had 18 direct reports, I was a shitty fucking manager.
Well, anybody would be with 18. That's a lot.
It was a lot.
I didn't understand that until I had 14, and 3 of them were like executive assistants. And so that was technically 15, and that was insane.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
You're just then at that point managing. There's no time to think. You're just answering yes, no questions.
Yeah. And I think no one really understands, like, there's managing of teams and driving results and getting people galvanized together and leading. That's one part of it. But the other part is managing the person who's going through a divorce, the person who is having a hard time breastfeeding and they're just coming back and they're, struggling because they're exhausted, because it's like that is a different level of management. And so, and on top of that, creative people in particular all need different levels of push-pull. Some people need encouragement. Some people need a little tough love. Some people need you to actually sit with them. Some people want to be left alone. So you're figuring out what everybody needs creatively. And then separately, you're a den mother. And I think by nature of being a mom, there's also a different level of expectation of your understanding of people's challenges. And I think while your employees think that, I think I also feel that. I'm sure you felt that as a mom. You have this protective nature. You want to really listen when someone's struggling and also try to help them fix it.
Yeah.
Which is not a good idea. I learned the hard way.
I learned the hard way too. I remember for a solid year, I was like the den mother, like therapist hours, come and talk to me and tell me your problems. And then I would try and fix them, or I would sit the employees down without any HR experience and try and mitigate it. Did not do one thing for our culture.
I'm sure.
And it pissed a lot of people off.
And I think I learned and I've learned this probably way too late in life, like listening is the best thing. You don't need to try and fix it. And most people just want to be heard, and they 100%. Don't necessarily want you to fix it. And I didn't really I thought it was I was responsible for making it better. And it took me a long time to realize that was not the case. I was responsible for creating space for people to be heard, creating a platform where they felt like they could be heard safely. And that was it. And beyond that, unless there was obviously a real egregious situation going on, but beyond that, I was just really needed to create feedback loop that would help share my experience and say, here's some things I've learned. You need to do your own thing, do what's right for you. I hear you. That sounds hard, whatever it may be. But I waited way too long to learn that.
So one thing I'm curious about, because you said 27 years?
Yeah.
So now today, young people view their careers as in the next 1 to 3 years, I'm going to get from 0 to CEO.
Yeah.
You and I know the long game, right? 17 years for me, not 17, almost 20, 27 for you. And I still meet people that are like, yep, 0 to 3 years. Sell the company, $1 billion, go.
I mean, listen, I think
What
today that is possible, but not for everyone. It's a little bit like winning the lottery. And I think that, it's kind of like being a supermodel. It's not everyone's going to get to do it. And there are those people that are going to get to do it. And I think because social media has put those people in a spotlight and you've been able to see so much of these young people. Whereas I think when you were younger, you didn't necessarily have access to that person who became a billionaire. It was in the Wall Street Journal. It wasn't on social media. So you didn't necessarily know. So while those stories were happening prior and there were some really brilliant people who were coming up with incredible ideas and taking them to fruition, younger kids didn't necessarily have access to those stories in the way that they do now. And you couldn't make $1 million being a YouTuber or a gamer. Like those jobs didn't exist. And so it's possible. It's definitely possible. And if you are going to be a YouTuber and have 3 employees, have at it. And you probably be great. If you want to build a big company, I would go slower. I mean, like I said, the management piece is probably one of the biggest driving team, understanding how to actually motivate people, how to get the best work out of people, how to think about the 2-year plan, the 5-year plan. That comes with experience and it comes with modeling from people who have done it before.
Yeah.
And granted, there are going to be a few people who are just innately great at it, but that is the supermodel.
Yeah. You talked about how the first 12 years, your career was first. I'd love to touch on what happened when you had Beckett.
Oh, the baby.
The baby.
I mean, I wish I could say that I shifted gears and I honestly didn't. I really, I would say like the first 4 years of his life, I did bedtime every night and I kept my nanny on the weekends, which people thought was awful, but I did it so that I could spend time with him and I wasn't just washing dishes and doing laundry and, making, because that was all it was. By the time I finished breakfast, I was starting lunch. By the time I finished cleaning up from lunch, I was starting to, and granted, I had my partner at the time, my ex-husband, but like having the nanny on the weekends actually, just Saturdays was a game changer because it really allowed me to spend time with him. But I wasn't as present as I would have liked to have been. I can honestly say that. I think what changed for me, and I know this is hard to even say it out loud, but it's like when I got divorced, I realized that like I only had him for a certain number of days a week. We shared custody. We were 50-50. And so the days that I had my son, I was like, I won't do anything at night. I'm out of work by 5:30. I'm in the car on my way home. And no evening events. And I realized that I'd never made that decision when I was working because A, work came first. And I know that's horrible to say, but it was where I was. And B, I didn't recognize it. And it wasn't until I separated and I was like, every minute I had with him was precious that I changed my behavior.
Yeah.
And once I changed my behavior, I realized I didn't need to stay later. I wasn't doing better work after 6 o'clock.
Right.
I was just there because I felt like I should be. And anybody who was working late could come into my office and ask a question, or I could take a late meeting and make everybody else stay late. And honestly set not a very good example for the rest of the team, which I was then after in retrospect being like, God, I'm not helping anyone. I'm actually showing people that you can't have both and that's not healthy. And so it was honestly a strange side effect, but it was a big difference for me.
Did you go through a period of like, once you made that decision where you're like, oh shit, is it going to be okay at work? Are people going to like be upset that I'm not there? Or do you feel like that was 100% self-imposed?
I mean, I think luckily by the time I had Beckett, I had a very senior role. So I had really solidified my position. I was not scared of my position. I was in a very good standing at the company. I was, things were, I was needed in that way and I felt needed. And I also, I don't know, I think that knowing that I was in a good place and knowing that I put in my time, I had this level of confidence to do that. And I was still on my BlackBerry. It was reachable, but I just wasn't physically in the office as much. And yeah, no one said a word. And I can pretty much guarantee any other of the young girls who were working in that department were probably happy to see it because I think it's scary when you're a young girl and the boss is tooling away in her office at 8 o'clock at night. It's like, that's not setting a good example.
Yep. Yeah. That was a big struggle for me. I felt like I would sneak out of the office and I was like, why am I sneaking out of my own office?
I know.
As if I'm committing some horrible crime by like going home to my children.
But I think that's also just the time we grew up in. Like now, I remember I interviewed this girl to do a social media job, and she's like, well, I don't want to work this time, and I won't do anything on the weekends, and I won't answer any texts after 5:30. And I was like, you know what? Good for you. But wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And I never in a million years would have said that. Like,
Right.
I was like, it just was not acceptable back then.
No, I know.
The expectation when we first started, when I got out of college, was that you worked until the day was done. When I was working at Donna Karan, everyone stayed until 10 o'clock at night, pretty much every night, but they were all gay men. They didn't have kids at home. They didn't have, and that was just what was expected.
Right.
It was literally the menu for dinner got passed around at 6:30, and it wasn't like who's staying for dinner. It was just like, put your dinner order in.
Right. I feel like that's this industry. I mean, it's a lot of industries, but that was this industry, and that's just how it was. And it's different now-ish. Not in some places, but I think people are trying to make a conscious effort. But sometimes, I don't know, that pattern needs to get made at night. And it's night before fashion.
Yeah,
and you gotta stay late.
Listen, I don't subscribe to the idea that there never is a time. And I think anybody who doesn't see, especially in a small growing business, if you have a startup, that there won't be moments where you have to actually put in extra time. And if that's not something you can or want to do, be really thoughtful about the kind of company you pick. Because if you're in a very large company, sometimes those things, in a particular type of job, that's okay. But if you're in a smaller company or a startup, or you're in a company that's in growth mode, or you're changing the way that things are done, you're in a new type of company, like there's some level of expectation that there will come a time. And listen, I think it all balances out. If it's Saturday, I will text my assistant and say, listen, I'm at the airport and something is wrong with my car. But if she's like, I want to go to the park in the middle of the day and you don't have anything going on, I'm like, great, go. Like, yeah. To me, I think there is some of that is, how you connect with your employees and talk with them. And again, it depends on the type of employee. It's a personal assistant. It's a little bit of a different thing. But yeah, I don't like the hard, fast, like, I will not do this ever, because shit, that's a little scary. Like, I don't know. I think
the pendulum has swung a little too far.
I think it depends on who it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So I want to go to the moment where you knew it was time. You said, okay, I'm done. And what was that decision like for you, and what happened the next day?
It didn't happen overnight. It was, some of it and what went down and why, I'm not totally able to talk about, but like in the big picture, what had happened was I had started to promote my team and give them real autonomy, and that was a good thing. They were all very senior. Some of the people who were on my senior team had been with me for like 25 years.
Oh my God.
Like the head stylist and I had worked for 25 years.
Wow.
And, head of design for women's 14 years, men's 15 years. Like, it was just, I knew everyone very well. We had a very easy working relationship and a language that we had developed. And they needed to be promoted and keep going. And I think in doing so, which was, the right thing to do when you think about succession planning, like you want to make sure that all your team is ready to go. But what started to happen was I had really kind of promoted myself out of a job. I wasn't feeling like I was contributing. I didn't feel like I was making a difference. I think there were some things that needed to change within the company. And we had a consultant come in and start to tell us the things we should change. And I got really concerned because some of them really flew in the face of what I had spent a lot of time trying to build.
Yeah.
And I remember really distinctly sitting in a room going through all the styling, and we laid it out on the floor, and we didn't have walls that went all the way up to the ceiling. They were like half walls, and I could hear a group of people on the other side of the wall. It was clearly a marketing team. There were 3 marketing teams. So I had Madewell, J.Crew, and Factory, and I could hear what at the time was the J.Crew marketing team. And I heard someone say, I don't know who it was, I heard someone say, yeah, but I don't think we should show that to her. She's never going to go for it. And I knew they were talking about me. And I was like, wow, in a normal scenario where business as usual and things are going the right direction, that is actually a good thing, because people are editing on your behalf. They're making decisions with you in mind, so that what gets to you is meaningful and is in the trajectory that you want it to go. But if you need to change,
right, and
the company needs to do things that are not necessarily in your trajectory or what you want, but maybe they are in the direction of the board, that is a problem. I'm now a hindrance. I'm actually a roadblock. And I was like, God, I don't want to be a roadblock. I don't want to have the team edit while they're thinking of me and then find out later that they should have done what their initial reaction was, because just my presence by being there wasn't necessarily going to help move things in the right direction or the direction that the company wanted to go. And the combination of that and just being exhausted and feeling like I wasn't necessarily learning and I wasn't contributing in the way I wanted to, and I didn't see my next move. I was like, and I think that happened over 2 years. It wasn't a slow thing. It was really a 2-year process. And I was scared too. My entire identity in life was J.Crew, or J.Crew group, I should say. And so it didn't happen overnight.
And was it weird on the day after the last day to wake up and?
I mean, ironically, I didn't have a formal last day. They were very, very gracious. We had a huge party where everyone got together and the whole company came together, and we had Prosecco and ice cream, which is my favorite things. And Mickey gave a toast. I said thank you and goodbye to everybody. I took selfies with everybody. I had handed out letters to all of my team. But they didn't ask me to clean up my office yet. They weren't forcing me out. So I would go in and pack up my bags and pack up the books and then walk around. But I wasn't, it was so weird. I should have just
done
said,
it in
please.
one shot.
I should have, but I couldn't. I just couldn't do it. And I sort of extended it over 2 weeks. And then finally someone from HR was like, I think maybe you shouldn't come back into the office. And I'm like, I know. It was so hard. And I'm like, do I have to give up my ID? And they're like, no, it's okay. You can keep it.
Meanwhile, a girl has it
that's an old one. That was from 1992, that ID.
Wow.
I know. I had lost that one. Clearly I couldn't find it. It was in the bag. So I'd had another one, but it was so hard. It was such a weird, I didn't know what to do with myself.
Right.
I had spent my career being booked. I had a bathroom installed in my new office when we moved, literally just 2 feet away, so that I didn't have to walk all the way to the other side of the building to go to the bathroom and lose time in my day.
Yeah.
That's how psycho my life was. And my assistant now, Kate, who still works with me, was working with me at J.Crew, and everyone's like, oh my God, your schedule's so crazy. And she's always like, oh, you have no idea. This is nothing.
Right.
My life now is so, I walked down here. I actually had time to I can actually leave now and I'm going to walk. And I just never, I ate lunch in meetings. I, would be in the middle of a sentence and be like, I got to run to the bathroom, come right back. Okay. And finish the sentence. It was just insane. And
was it hard to adjust to that?
It was so hard. I think the hardest part was just feeling like nobody needed me, you know? Right. It was really no one wanted my opinion on anything. And that was really hard. And I also went from having 5 people taking care of me. I had a full-time nanny, which I no longer really needed. I had a housekeeper constantly, which I had, but much less because I was home all the time and I wasn't really making a mess. I had, and someone who was managing my PR and 2 assistants. So it was I had a lot of support and people to call. I couldn't send an attachment. It was an embarrassment because I never really had enough computer.
Right.
I'm still bad with the computer stuff. I can send an attachment now, but it
takes
anyway. It's I have to really think about it.
So at what point? So I have 2 follow-ups to that. I remember when I came back from one of my mat leaves where I had lost my 18 direct reports. I just had one. I purposefully shed them, and we consolidated everyone into one person who then reported to me. Right.
Wow. Okay.
But I went through this no one needs me. No one's asking me a question.
Why did you go from 18 to 1?
Because we hired a creative director.
Oh, wow. How long did it take you to get used to that?
It took me about 5 months.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be. Did they defer to you? How did it work?
I would just have meetings with her. She would present to me. I would present to her. This is what I'm thinking. This is where I want to go. Then she'd present back to me with her edits. I wouldn't have known all the back and forth, the nitty gritty that I was in. So this was in 2018. So, to be in that and all of a sudden you don't feel needed. You're like, I have ideas. Oh, I want to share this thing. And then it's no, wait, gotta just.
That's so hard.
It's really hard. And it really threw me for a long time. Who am I if I'm not doing that?
And when did you actually sell your company?
We sold it in 2020.
So what made you decide to get the credit? Was it just that you had so many people working for you and you were like,
it was unsustainable to have that many people to also be the face, right? As we saw social media merging and, becoming really important. I was also doing all these trunk shows. So like to be on the road, social media.
oh my God.
Then know what's going on at all times and be up on every trend and go to Linea Pelle to the leather shows, go to Korea twice a year. Like it was unsustainable.
Yeah.
But I feel you and I empathize with you when you're like, no one needs me. What? I'm here and I have ideas and I have creativity.
Well, and listen, I don't even know if I had any ideas at that point. I was just like, don't you want me to come to the meeting? It was this feeling of just, and it was compounded by the fact that not long after I separated from my partner and then the pandemic hit. So I kind of went into this very, things wound all the way down.
Right.
And that I think was it was good for me. It's made me approach things very differently now. But it was by far some of the hardest time in my entire life. Like no joke. I remember I was on the board of Shake Shack for 10 years. I just cycled off recently, but I would go to board meetings and I would look around at these people. I'm like, oh my God, your lives are so full. You have so much going on. And I just felt completely disconnected from the world of business and things moving and shaking. And I know, and I remember thinking, like, do you still want me? And they were so gracious. I'm like, we love you. You're still valuable. You don't need to be valuable to be. Your value comes in all of your experiences. It's not.
Right.
But I still was like, I couldn't get out of my head. I mean, I just felt so inadequate and so kind of disconnected from everyone and everything.
And what do you think pulled you out of that, or how did you pull yourself out of it?
I mean, time and therapy. It was not. I mean, it was so hard. I used to get invited to everything. I went to the Met Ball. I was, on the Vogue Fashion Fund with Anna Wintour. So I was included in a lot of things, and I mistakenly connected that to value and to people wanting me, but they didn't want me. They just wanted the Jenna Lyons who worked at J.Crew, who represented and had money. It's like, that's what was the value. And I didn't really understand that until it was all gone. And I was like, oh, it wasn't about me.
Right.
And I really had done a number on myself believing that it was me. And that's why I think I have a totally different approach to going to events and all the social media stuff now, because I know that the people who are my friends during all of that are still my friends. And the people who walked away, it's fine. I don't need to go back in there.
I bet it changes your approach to relationships and trust too.
For sure. I mean, I think there's nothing like being stripped down to the studs to make you really consider what you put back in the room.
Yep. I love that analogy.
Thanks.
So now you are busier. You have two you have two current gigs.
I do.
You have Love Scene.
Yes.
Which my son pointed out to me. He's like, because he reads my text, he's like,
I love that.
Who does she have a love scene with?
You know, it's so funny. I love that he picked up on it because it was a double entendre.
I didn't pick up on it until he said that. I was like,
that is so sweet.
I know.
We were talking about that. It was about this idea of beauty and so much about feeling loved is how someone sees you and how, when someone thinks you're beautiful, it's he makes you feel beautiful. And someone else might not think you are, but if the person you love or somebody sees you and that's where beauty is how someone sees you. And that's what we were talking about. And so that's how the name came to be. So how old is he?
He's 12.
Very smart.
Yes, he's very smart.
That's a very, very interesting intuition and pickup.
Yes. Yep. So you have this company, which is incredible. I don't feel good unless I have false lashes on. So I
did not know that about you until we traveled together.
And then you saw me pick them off in the airport.
Well, and one of them was sticking off at lunch. I was like, come here.
Oh, they only lasted so long. And then you have an incredible role where you're overseeing a creative agency.
So we are. This has been interesting. We started fun. So I have known Johnny Bauer for a while. Johnny Bauer, prior to FundamentalCo, was at Droga 5, which is a very well-respected ad agency. And then he went inside to Blackstone. And what he was doing within Blackstone was really thinking about how do you think about strategy and, what companies are currently and what could they be. And so much of, this world of, buying and selling companies is, are you maximizing their potential? Are you getting them the biggest TAM, the total addressable market? If you think about the company in a different way, could they be bigger? Could they have a bigger addressable market? Could they actually show up differently in the world? And could they have a higher value, a higher multiple? And so that's what he was doing at Blackstone. I was consulting and doing work with him while he was there. He has since carved out, and we have created really what is a strategic creative agency. So we don't just do creative work, we do strategy work. So it's basically looking at a company and saying, hey, you're currently doing X and you're known for X, but if you think about your product line in this way, or if you think about the business that you're doing, so there's anything from robotics to airlines to clothing. So we're not just sort of looking at, we don't do the end game of just the creative. We're really thinking about how do you reimagine what this company could be and what are the steps you need to take to get there and to reimagine that, and how do you bring the team along? What are the core tenets you need to shift, and how do you think about that? So we've been doing that now since January, and it's been a whirlwind. We're more busy than we can handle, which has been great. And so I really focus mostly on, hospitality, real estate, anything that's sort of home or visually, real estate based. That's something that I'm really comfortable with, and I've done a lot with, J.Crew stores, my own homes, et cetera, beauty and anything fashion related, et cetera. Anything that has more of a consumer goods product when you're making something is sort of where I usually focus. But we do take on projects that are all, very diverse. I mean, we have a newspaper, a museum, airline, robotics. The list is long and very varied, which has been great because there's a lot of different strategists on the team. And so I really focus on the things that need those kinds of perspectives.
And in this new chapter, do you feel like the same brain and creativity you got that fueled you mostly with, let's just say, apparel, shoes, brand, you get that same satisfaction? I mean,
in a way, it's actually, at least in this stage of my career, it's actually better because I think, as you said, when you get to the senior level, you're doing a lot more managing and not as much creative work.
Yeah.
Just because you need to promote the people underneath you to be creative. So you have to kind of give stuff away. What's nice about this is I'm really just touching I'm touching all the strategy work. And that is creatively and intellectually very exciting and just so tactile. I get to get really in there. And I also it's a little bit like, the best description I can say is like, when you go and look at houses and you kind of get this bird's eye view into someone's home, you see the kind of furniture, whether they have children, you see, their closets and, all their toiletry. It's like, it's a really strange, very intimate look into a really diverse group of homes and people. And it's kind of the same thing. You get in there, you are really working with these companies, but you need to ask really deep, pertinent questions. And you get this really intimate view of these companies. And, I think having come from a world where I know what it takes to actually run the company, I understand what it feels like to be on the other side. I have been on the receiving end of consultants, and I know how hard it is when someone makes a suggestion that you can't actually do, or you just don't feel like you can do. And so I think the way that I approach things is a little different just because I've been on the other side. And most consultants oftentimes have grown up in consultancy land and they haven't actually done it. And so I also get to apply my knowledge in a way that I feel is a great advantage for me and for them, and feels good. It feels like I'm back in the game.
I love it. Jenna fucking Lyons. You're the best.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
Oh my God, I'm so happy I got to talk to you. Thank you, my love.
Yes, of course. And all the handles, drop them here.
Well, you can go to lovescene.com and get eyelashes if you would like. And if you need any strategy work, you can go to fundamentalco.com.
So you do more, you'll take anyone outside the investment firm. You can.
Yeah, so we're carved out of Blackstone.
Oh, so Blackstone. Okay.
So he was inside of Blackstone. I was consulting with them. Then we carved out, and so we have a whole new company.
Oh,
so they're a client.
You heard it here first.
They're a client, but we don't work.
Oh, I might be calling you.
You have any money? We're not cheap.
Thank you.
No, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Sponsored by Magnum Ice Cream. Our delicious layers of velvety ice cream, gooey sauces, and crackling Belgian chocolate are the perfect match for your girls' night or dinner party. From classics like mini double caramel to our new mini white chocolate and cookies, Magnum has a taste of unapologetic indulgence for everyone. Even when it's mini, it's more. More is more with Magnum ice cream. I just wanted to thank you guys for listening to today's episode. I also want to ask you to rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts. I know it's a pain in the butt, but it actually helps with search and algorithms. So if you love this podcast, it is an easy way to get it more visible and out there. I also want you to follow me on Instagram at Rebecca Minkoff, at RM Superwomen, and be sure to check out my book, Fearless, The New Rules for Unlocking Creativity, Courage, and Success. Thank you again, and you will hear from me next week.